So I just want to welcome everybody. As you know, this is the tri-board meeting. It is required by the charter. It's a new addition that we must confer, the Board of Finance must confer with the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen by October 15th with respect to the budget. So we've got an agenda that outlines that today. It's fairly open, but that is our topic today, to talk about budget planning. So we'll need to stay on topic with those items only. Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7:04 roughly. So welcome everybody. We'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just as we did before in our last tri-board meeting, we have asked an independent person to act as moderator. So Ted has agreed to be moderator, and I'm going to go ahead and turn the meeting over to him.
Okay, first thing we did last time, and I'd like to do it again, is we just went around the room and introduced ourselves. So if we could start with Eric and work around, and then we'll hear from who the public is to wrap up. That'll get us started tonight.
Okay, my name is Eric Anderson, and currently I am the town administrator.
Bill DeRosiers, I'm on the Board of Finance.
Mark Brinker, Chair of the Board of Finance for about 1 week.
Joanne Heber, Vice Chair of the Board of Finance for a couple more meetings.
Rob England, Board of Finance.
Jed Larson, moderator, and planning and zoning chair.
Jeff McGuire, First Selectman.
Kimberly Prasan, Board of Finance.
Liz Lopez, Board of Finance. Louise Goodwin, Board of Finance.
What's your
And
name?
that's Jacob.
Is the Board of Finance too?
And Travis.
Yeah, tutor.
Julie, go across the back and go with you, please.
Terry Smith, Finance Director for Andover Elementary School.
Valerie Bruno, Superintendent, Andover Elementary School.
Linda Fish, resident of Andover.
Elaine Bookart. I wear a lot of hats, but right now I'm just recording this meeting.
Bob Hamburger, Thorn in all your sides.
Marcy Minor, Andover resident.
Diane Grenier, concerned citizen.
Thank you.
I just want to point out for the record that I thought Linda said President of Andover.
Oh.
She's the resident. So I was
You can have it.
I wouldn't want that job.
You can have it.
So first item on the agenda is the public speak. Anybody from the public like to comment at this point?
Diane Grenier.
Marcy?
I'm wondering, is this a tri-board meeting? It seems a little shallow. I don't see anyone from the Board of Ed. And one person from the Selectmen.
Is there a
requirement for a quorum?
This is an odd meeting, so we have quorum. Board of Selectmen, Jeff Murray had sat there and said that he was not going to be attending. He sat there and said he had other commitments. Scott Persona is sick tonight, so I did not hear anything from Mayor or Carolee. So I'm just letting you know. And as far as the Board of Education, I know we heard from Caitlin,
Yeah, Caitlin agreed to come to any of the 3 nights.
but she couldn't come tonight.
And then something came up, and now,
No, listen, Caitlin had a birthday party for her son. I get it. But all the rest of the members?
There was only one other member that had planned on being here, and they have had a medical emergency tonight.
Okay,
Yeah.
that answers that.
Let's go. Just for procedural purposes, this really is, I think, a Board of Finance meeting, so we have a quorum. I think we can consider that. And we need to hold a meeting per the charter, so.
Any other public comment? Okay, we'll go on to the next item, which is the Board of Finance. Outline of revised budget process and timeline and draft form of answer.
I'll just go ahead and address that overall, give a summary.
Okay?
Okay. You have in printed form here, this has also been distributed to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance and the Board of Ed. So this is a proposed outline of the budget process, and primarily the budget timeline. So starting on October 15th, we're having this tri-board meeting per the charter. This is required. I'm just going to read through this for the record. The week of December 1st, budget worksheets go out to the department heads, chairs, outside agencies, with the target of returning those worksheets within the town. This is the town budget primarily. Return those completed worksheets to the town administrator's office. Okay. Some details there. The town administrator will distribute the draft budget workbook for the general and capital budgets ready for the Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen by February 2nd. Okay. The date here stated is the Board of Education to submit its budget to the Board of Finance. Okay. So there's a note here that this is required. I think it's a term, in terms of charter. Notice that it falls on a Sunday this year, often because it says X amount of days before the end of the year, fiscal year. February, March, starting Wednesday, February 4th, meeting weekly. This gives the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance several working meetings before the April 1st public hearing. So we would need to, we hold a series of informational meetings. Okay. March 18th, the Board of Finance would have to vote by then to send the meeting, or to schedule the public hearing. We've got the public hearing scheduled for April 1st. That's tentative, but it's a good target date, given the time constraints for the annual town budget meeting. And per the charter, the annual meeting must be the second week of April, between April 7th and April 11th. I think this is actually April 6th or April 10th, if you go Monday through Friday. So I think these dates are actually incorrect.
Then it's 6th through the 10th.
6th through, yeah.
Off by a day.
So, yeah, this is, again, informal, but we would put this in there. And then with the target of the townwide budget referendum and the RAM referendum on May 5th, 2026. Okay. I'll just note here that I did get a request from Caitlin, the Board of Ed chair, that the Wednesday, April 8th does conflict with the Board of Ed meeting, and she wanted if we would be able to move it. So that would certainly be under consideration. I think if we did, traditionally we've had it on a Tuesday or Wednesday, or Tuesdays are kind of what kept in mind. But we did have it last year, the same thing. It coincided with a Board of Ed meeting, of course, which causes some scheduling issues. So this is a proposed schedule. In general, we need to follow this outline pretty closely. A lot of these dates are prescribed by the charter, at least in terms of the number of days we must complete them by in advance of the town budget meeting and the fiscal year. Okay. Yep.
I had a thought, if I just interject, about the first vote, and then the second, December 1st, the week of December 1st. As many of you know, Eric is leaving us. Typically, he would send those out to the department heads, right? The requests for their preliminary budgets. And that's 2 weeks after he leaves.
Correct. The finance department is well aware of that deadline, and Chris Harkley, Eric Kelly, will get those out to the department heads on time.
Cool. All right.
Yep.
We'll make sure that that gets done. And so since you announced it, Eric just turned in his resignation. And so I can't tell you how upsetting that is to me and what a loss it is for the community. So I hope everybody understands that it's a significant loss to the community that Eric is leaving. Great for Eric, because he's going to another rural place and a place he'll enjoy, and he's gonna get paid a lot more money. So congratulations, Eric, and thank you for everything. Back to your list, the Board of Education did request that that date be changed, so I recommend that the Board of Finance change it to the 7th of the 9th. We will make sure that everything gets out on time. We have a Board of Selectmen meeting to sit there and work through Eric's resignation. And one other thing that the Board of Education asked is that they asked for time before the town meeting for specific questions and answers related to their budget. And let everybody understand here at this meeting, the Board of Education is sitting up front with us. This is a town budget, it's everybody. There will not be, and I don't care who sets up the room, the Board of Education will be there. They deserve to be there, they deserve to answer questions, they deserve to deal with the issues that are there. So if it doesn't get done, and anyone shows up at that meeting, they have tables. We need to all be up there, every one of us.
Great.
Yep. Sounds good.
Okay? So please accommodate the Board of Education on their request. You move that meeting. You do it third Tuesday.
Yeah, we'll make that.
Valerie, do you have any idea whether you have a preference on the 7th or the 9th? It's Tuesday or Thursday, before or after the Board of Ed meeting?
This is April, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't need the answer right now. We'll probably try to finalize the schedule on our Board of Finance meeting next week.
I would say the 9th.
The 9th,
Yes,
Is that Thursday?
the
that
Thursday?
is the Thursday.
Works for me.
All right. If you want to check with the board and, or I can send an email to Kate, we can just validate that.
Shannon?
You know, we don't have to write it in stone. If we decide on that schedule, we can change it if we need to, but obviously for planning purposes, just good to get that out there. Okay. Okay.
Any other questions on the budget process and timeline?
I would just make a statement if I could. Last year was the first year that we put this into play. And a lot of the things that are on here is, you know, it's aggressive compared to what we did in the past as far as having a lot of meetings and having a lot of input. I mean, nothing's gonna change. I mean, with all the changes that you just announced and the changes. Eric, am I correct? Did I hear, I joined the Board of Selectmen meeting late, but did Cheryl hand in her resignation too? The treasurer?
She did.
Okay,
Oh,
just asking a question. I mean, you know, so she will not be involved in the budget process and putting the spreadsheet together and all of those kind of things?
She will not, you'll get the initial spreadsheet from Chris Kelly, or you'll do it yourself as a Board of Finance.
Right.
Whichever you prefer.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be up to the board, of course, and then I know that there were issues and different selectmen had said things that they wanted done, you know, since we're talking about the process. It's not for me to say that, you know, just to, you know, a couple mistakes were made and people had preferences of how they want the spreadsheet presented, but I'm just putting it out there in a public meeting. It'll be a difficult year with new people on board with the announcement that was just made and, you know, other people handling those things, but there'll be a lot of eyes on it, I'm sure, so. This was already hard to me from being on board 4 years and really liking the timeline we used to have, a little bit pushed back just to have some time to digest it, but. That's all, I mean, and then the beginning meetings are supposed to be kind of collaborative between the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance. I know, I think we had one member of the Board of Selectmen, Jeff, came to our first meeting, perhaps there was others, that's just from memory. Is this year the process gonna be possibly a little different with having more members present?
I'm gonna be attending all of your meetings.
Yeah,
Just like I'm doing with the Board of Education, I'm
Yeah.
gonna be attending the Board of Finance meetings.
I think that's.
As an
great.
ex officio member, non-voting, but
I heard
fully
that.
participating.
That's awesome.
I remember hearing.
It helped me to go to all of the meetings so that I heard things firsthand. The ladies do too. Kim and Liz are always present. It just helped, right? Didn't it help with the process?
Yep.
Yeah, no, I love that. Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is expectation from the Board of Finance and the other two boards and potential spending targets.
Okay, I guess I gotta address that, it was pretty straightforward, we did, have a vote, this is a non-binding recommendation. Of course, each board has to come up with their own, budget, but it is our, proposed, expenditure limit that you not increase the current expenditures more than 1.5% of the current expenditures for the fiscal year 26, 27. So we know that's fairly aggressive, but, that's a reasonable target.
Any questions on that item? Okay, I'm gonna move down to item 4, Board of Education Superintendent. Identify major items that affect future costs in the 26-27 budget year and projecting the next 5 years. Demographic input.
Yeah, I need one. Take away his space. Oh, so big. So, just because I know we want to make sure we stay on topic, I have a few notes here that I'm going to refer to, and I did copy them. This isn't anything official. This is just Val's notes on the bottom there. But I know that some people are visual learners, and so if I'm referring to something, I wanted you to have that in front of you to be able to refer to. So don't hold me to any mistakes that are in here. It's just, I think I have another, okay, hang on a second. It's just that I know that this is our opportunity to kind of talk about things that are drivers. And so while we were all together, I was a little surprised that we are talking about target first before this. There's a few things that I would like us to just be able to talk about together going into this budget season. I've been here 6 years, and I know that sometimes during the course of the budget season, things get a little bit skewed in terms of what real numbers are, what aren't real numbers are. So I've tried to really put this together so that I am speaking to all of the real numbers. So the difficulty is that I've been here since 2020. We also, I want to say, we have a habit as a town sometimes of making it seem like when we're looking at the budget numbers, we're comparing apples to apples when it comes to the school and when it comes to the town. And I want to show you a few ways that we have to kind of, hopefully, open up and look at that a little bit differently. So I've listed here the Andover Elementary budget increases and the town budget increases for the past 6 years. It helps to explain, I think, a little bit why the school lines up sometimes with very different needs during budget season to accommodate the specific facts surrounding our increase. So the first one, for example, you can see we were at a negative 4% in 2020. In 2020, when I got here, there had been a reduction in students. How did they make it through that year? Well, that was the school year where they closed in March due to COVID. So they would have not been able at the end of the year to necessarily accommodate all of their expenditures, but they did close in March. There was a great deal of savings with closing in March. You see the other ones there, the 0, the 3, the 4. I don't have to read the individual ones, 2 and 5. On the town side, there were other needs. There were absolutely other needs. They went from 2 to 1 to 5 to 2 to a 15% increase, and then down 2 points. So when we're talking about why the school would have a really hard time accommodating such a low target, we do have to consider the fact that over the last 6 years, we've seen over 6 years a 12% increase over the course of 6 years, with an average of 2 then per year. And we have been able to accommodate 26.77% increase on the town side. And so because of that, I think there's a lot of things, expenditures that haven't been considered on the school side. If you look at numbers here on the bottom, solely because I believe that during budget season, oftentimes we do have some residents that will say, the school is overfunded. The school is overfunded. And I want to be able to make sure that people understand that is a little bit of a misnomer. I'm going to show you 3 other things in here. It shows you from 2019 to 2025, there has been over the course of those 6 years, $500,000 increase to the school's budget. On the town side, the increase has been $886,000. So we do recognize as a town very oftentimes that the needs are not the same from one side to the other. So we do that on a regular basis. On the next page, I have minimum budget requirement. And I would like the Board of Finance to be able to speak to that this year when we go into our town meeting. If you don't know what minimum budget requirement is, and I know a lot of you do, but some people don't. Minimum budget requirement is the state's ED 12. And it takes into consideration the average school. This has been in effect since the 1970s. And it says, unless a town has a loss of a school, you close the school, or you have a significant decrease in the number of students, it requires local municipalities to, at the very minimum, at the very bare bones minimum, keep your budget the same. And we haven't talked about that a lot. And so as we go into budget season, if we could talk about that, that at least is always off the table then, and we wouldn't have people misinformed. I've put in some into my notes here, just some ways that people could look that up if they want to. But minimum budget requirement, it does prohibit municipalities from budgeting less for local board of education than it did the year before. So that's like always the starting point then for a town. The only change can be if you've had like a significant loss of students. So if you look at the bottom of our MBR there, that's here for 2023, you'll see a negative 15.98 in a reduction of residents, and that is to the 712. So on the top, you're looking at 2 different budgets, 4.2 and 4.3 for a total of 8.5. They look at K-12. So our ED-12 is a combination of our budget and RAM's budget. And it looks at only Andover residents for this ED-12. And so because RAM had a loss of students, on the bottom they say, okay, we're recognizing a loss of 16.9 students, and therefore that budget would be able to be reduced for that minimum. And you were in compliance, everything was fine. But I point this out so that going into a budget season, we have increased by 40 kids over the years, and so the MBR every year does go up anyways by a certain amount. If the MBR is not taken into consideration and a town passes a budget that does not meet MBR, there could be a loss of ECS dollars. And ECS dollars, which again is not necessarily something that we talk about, it is in the audit, I know that, it is in the revenue source, and sometimes we do say ECS dollars, but that's $2 million that comes into the town for educational purposes. And I put this in here because I do know that the Board of Finance a couple of years ago and last year grappled with whether or not that money was going to be the same amount in planning. And both myself and Eric had mixed messages given to us as a superintendent and town administrator about whether it was going to be held harmless, but it is held harmless. So this year and next year, thankfully, it'll stay at that 2.004 million. So we can keep that in mind. Now, I did reference an article in here, not for any other reason, not to say I can't believe somebody said that, but I put it in here because I wanted to point out that these things at a town meeting aren't legal to go less. So I would ask that whoever the chairperson is, Mark just said it won't be him at that meeting, bless you. When we make the statement at the beginning from the charter that says a reminder that you can't add to at that town meeting, we always remind residents, you can't add to it, but you can vote to decrease a budget. I really think that it's important so that we don't have people riled up, that we point out to them that the school's budget, there is a bottom point to that. We can't go below what it was last year. So that a resident doesn't make a claim or make a motion for something that could get us in trouble. Because that would have gotten us in trouble had that one gone through. We would have had a legal issue with not meeting MBR. And then we could have had a loss of ECS dollars. So I do think that that's important for us to add that in there. I also would ask the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen, because you guys are meeting together, to also consider the fact that that number that we put on the ED12 is what we say we spent on educational dollars. So when there's money that's been returned these last couple of years from RAM, if it gets put back into the general fund, we do need to be cognizant of the fact then that we haven't spent what we said we spent on the ED12. If those dollars are no longer educational dollars, they're put back into the general fund and not spent on education. Because if that happens, we also could wind up in a situation as a town where we're saying we've spent it on education and we haven't. So those are things there. Now, if you looked at MBR too, and this was important, I pointed out our number of 500,000 on the front on purpose. Because the formula they use here for ECS, if you notice on the next page, this page that says on the top, the basic ECS formula.
Which page are we on?
Right there. Yep. The very minimum that they use, and we all know that especially small towns, the per pupil spending is usually about 20,000.
Hang on
But-
one second, hang on one second. I'm trying
Right
to
there,
catch
right
up.
there. You got it. In the first paragraph, there is.
Yep.
The very minimum that they will use at a state level is at 11.5. So I'm pointing this out because our numbers have gone up in the past 6 years by K6, because they only do K12, has nothing to do with pre-K. K6, our numbers have gone up 40 kids. So the state would have adjusted our MBR. They would have used that 11.5 formula, and they would have adjusted us 461,000. So our number on the front page that I gave you there of we've gone up 500,000 in 6 years is very much aligned to what the state would have said over these past 6 years is the minimum requirement. So we're not far off. And I love us to be on the same page when it comes to informing the taxpayers that, in fact, that is very closely aligned to what they would have said at the state with MBR. If you went up 40 kids, we would look at that at about 461,000. So with that said, still going through my notes here, sorry, I took a
Can
lot
I
of
ask one
notes.
question? That's K through 6, right?
Yes,
K
the
through 6?
state, we've had 80 new kids, 40 of which are K6.
So your increase, your increase is 40 children over how many
6 years.
6
40 K6 kids. 40 K6
what
kids,
year?
80 kids total, Jeff, but K12 is all that MBR looks at,
Okay,
okay?
because I mean, I came to your meeting the last day and I actually did the analysis and went back to your records that you actually post online for your, and you only increased K through 6 by 5 students over these 3 years. But that's all you post on your website is just the last 3 years.
No, I'll show you right here.
Take
We're
the
getting-
pre, take the pre-K off.
No, we're getting to it, I promise.
Okay.
Okay.
So can I just say, you said 40 kids from what year? So the 2021 year, or?
I arrived in 2020, so I have the numbers in here. I'll
Oh,
show
so
you.
you're saying 2019, 2020?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
I
I
can
just
show
want to
you
make sure
right
we're
there.
looking at the same.
There's
Yeah.
an enrollment report, a couple pages.
Yeah, it's in here, yeah. So the other factors that are really important that I want us to consider on the next page is insurance. I have been disappointed that the insurance consortia, which the town itself is signed up for, our insurance consortia has nothing to do with Balmoral or the school. Before I even arrived, the town of Andover was part of the consortium. And it's a great consortium, and it is Hebron and the town of the school, Andover, the town over the school, Marlboro, the town of the school, HM, and RAM. It's those entities. I didn't ask to be a part of it. We have to be a part of it. The town has signed us up for this. So it's not a situation where the school can look elsewhere for insurance. We must be a part of the consortium. So I feel very strongly that as a town then, if we're requiring my budget to be part of that, that we do need some support for that. And this year is a tough year. I have been to all 70 meetings since I've been here in 6 years. And I've been a little disappointed that only one time have we had representation. And I'd asked for representation because it's a tough situation to go through all those numbers. And it's very important, Board of Finance, because if you look at my $750,000 in insurance, and Eric's insurance, and Ram's insurance, this is 12% of the whole town's budget. Okay, it's like 1.2 million with what we pay for the school, for the town, and our portion toward the levy at Ram.
Can you
That's
clarify, is this health insurance,
Yes,
all
health
school
insurance.
benefits,
Health
right?
insurance, yeah. So, health and dental, yeah.
And
So-
I'll ask one question since you brought it up, and I understand districts and towns will shop around time to time. I understand, however, the town is locked in and the school is
Yes.
part of that.
Yes.
Is there a number of years that if it's that big of a thing? I mean, I know the town.
The thing is the insurance consortium itself, we have, like I said, 8 entities that vote. And the thing is that as a unit, just like a Board of Finance, a
Right.
Board of Selectmen, or a Board of Ed, as a unit, we vote. And so if at some point we need to go elsewhere and look for something else as a self-insured consortium, we can do that. But it requires all of us at our monthly meetings to be able to do that. And we have shopped for certain things, for stop loss insurance, we've, shopped over the years for things. In some years, we fare very well and we come in low, in other years, we come in high. It depends on how many of the members of the consortium are high.
And that's what I mean, if it gets to ridiculous, like you've given us a good overview of it. I definitely dove into insurance during, the budget season this year, because I thought that what we saw was a lot. And I don't need to take over your portion.
That's okay.
So I'm just saying, so that the town has, say it gets out of control, as it is for everyone, they can go elsewhere.
Well, so we have 2 votes.
But you have to vote with the town, the Board of Ed.
No, well,
Ram,
we have 2 votes. So RAM, because of the number of people that are insured, gets 2 votes. And then Hebron Town of, Board of Ed, Andover Town of, Board of Ed, Marlborough Town of, Board of Ed, and AHM. I think I might have forgotten them before. So those are the votes. And we have a great consortium. But I would love to have somebody from the town there on our monthly meetings, because this is a lot of money. Like I said, it's
To have a vote,
12%.
gotcha.
12%,
Yeah.
otherwise I'm the only vote. And I've been the only vote, for a very, very long time. So that's important to me, because I think that when we come to you guys then, people don't understand. I cannot change that number in our budget. We are tied to that consortium. So AES, we have $750,000. And we have about 4 times the number of employees on the insurance as the town hall does. There's 7 or 8, Eric? I think
From
8,
town's insurance,
8 of them, 8 people.
well, I think less than that, actually.
Yes,
Because
yes.
we incentivize the hell out of people not to take the town's insurance. So we have, I think, currently either 4 or 5 people that take fee in lieu of instead of the insurance.
So, yeah, so when you're considering a 1.5 starting point, understand that I put the numbers here. For me, we had a meeting this past week, and we were told that we can anticipate 16.5% increase this year for the consortium. Yes, I about died. I thought, oh my goodness. I have 4 times the number of people on the insurance. And so the issue with that then for the school's budget is if you take 750,000 and you add 16.5% to that, we're looking at a 2.5% increase to our budget with nothing else different except to cover our insurance. On the town side, you'd be looking at a 0.04% increase. So that's huge. That's apples to oranges. It's no comparison. The town could easily, not that they want to, but the town side could easily be 0.04% in a budget. And we can't. So that's difficult. Likewise, the largest part of any school's budget has to do with our human capital, has to do with our people. we have a lot more employees. Again, there are 7 full-time employees on the town side. We have a lot more than that. We have, again, that's the largest portion of our budget. We're talking about, 5 times the number of people that are there, that are employees. So again, if we look at this with an average pay increase of 3%, contractual obligation to the size of the school would be 1.5% right there. So we are already talking about 1.5% for contractual obligations and salaries, and 2.5% if that insurance premium goes up to 16.5%. And again, I have no control over the insurance. I can't look elsewhere. Wish we could, but we couldn't. So I also do know that once Terry and I sit and we've only started to do this because it's October, which is earlier, but when we look at some of the changes, we've had a lot of teachers have babies and get married, which is all wonderful news, but of course, when that happens, we look at the insurance and say, okay, they just went from a single to a family plan. So when we do that, and we consider the increases that we know about, we also know that we're looking at a total then of 5% right there for just those 2 things, for the contracts and the insurance. So we also did say last year, everybody knows, we've been saying it all year, that we will need that 6th grade teacher this year. And so we definitely said that last year. So when you add those things in, we are looking, and that's nothing else, because we've just begun this process. As you guys know, it's October, so we don't have numbers and things. It's not apples to apples. So this is big for us. It's difficult, I understand that, but I think when we look at the combination of the 3 budgets, our needs, our expenditures do have to be looked at a little bit differently. And the last thing, in my notes here because we said you wanted to look at things in the projection for this next year, costs, is that our budget, our operational budget, is 100% expenditures. So we do a budget, and we know that from day 1 to the last day of the budget season, that money's gonna be money in and money out. It's all on expenditures. That's what our budget's based on. We don't have any funds. So there's no savings funds or things like that. So to cut, you're actually cutting a bill that you know that you're already gonna receive. Where we are different from the town, because it's apples to oranges, I'm not saying we're the same, is about 75% of a town budget, when you're considering what their needs are, about 75% of the budget is expenditures. Things that you know for 100% sure are gonna be expended during the course of that year. That's where they're different than us. And then about a quarter of their budget is funds. It's those savings accounts for projects for later on, which makes sense for a town, but I'm just saying that's where we're not the same. So when someone says you've got to cut a 1%, sure, it hurts, but you're cutting it from something that is not 100% sure already in expenditure during the course of that year. So that's where we're very different. So in considering those things, I know there'll be a few questions on this last page too. On the last page, this is available obviously every month at our board meeting. This is the October 1st enrollment. So this will back up our MBR. This will back up the fact that we are moving forward in terms of size. This does show you that 6th grade need currently in October. And it does show you, and I circled October only because when the state looks at enrollment, they look at October 1st. So that's why I circled October. And you can see it was 175 back in 2020. And it's 247 now. If you minus the pre-K on the top for MBR purposes, on the right, you'll see that's 186 K6ers. RAM has 128 712ers. So, yep, we were up 72 kids by October of this year in the 6-year span. 40 are K6ers. And so that misnomer that we are way overfunded, I hope you look at the MBR. I hope you also consider the ECS dollars. I hope that you consider the fact that there are some of these variables that I can't control, like insurance. And I do want people to see that when you look at the K-6 budget moving forward on the bottom there, that if you take our budget and you divide it by a number of kids, we're like 7,000 less than RAM. So again, the question on here was looking at future costs. Those are our future costs, the salaries, the insurance. A lot of things that we don't even have on here yet, but for us to start off at something 1.5 that doesn't even cover a lot of those other things. So I think that these are things that I hope that the board of finance and selectmen will consider. And Shannon, I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, I just, great presentation. I was gonna get at exactly what you got under the second to last page, which is, I was part of the contract negotiations for all of the two different certified and non-certified. We have an average for both of them, which frankly just barely meets cost of living adjustment with all that's going on, of about 3% per year. So if you take both of those into account, it's 3% across the board among basically all of our employees. That's before we get out of the gate and add in the insurance. So when I heard 1.5, I knew that was just wholly unreasonable as far as our ability to meet that goal. We can't do it based on our contractual obligations as much as we would like to.
Can I ask a question? So you got this sheet, right? This is your student enrollment, right? So in 2020, 2021, the 175, there was no pre-K at that point in time, right?
Yes, there was.
There was pre-K? Do you know the number?
When I arrived, we had 2 classrooms. They weren't completely full, but we had 2 classrooms.
Okay, can you get us that number?
Sure.
Because that would be helpful, because if I take the pre-K out of your current number, I only get 11 student increase.
What, I'm sorry, what do you mean?
So I use 247 because if I remember correctly, in previous conversations, you had always told us the pre-K would be self-funding and self-supporting with grant funding and tuition. And I don't remember it being in place back in 2021, so that's 5-6 years ago, because I only remember.
For pre-K?
Yep.
Oh, yes, pre-K's been there since 2016 or 17.
All right, so my bad. I'd like to know the number on 175, because then that would tell me what to add to the 11.
I will make sure that during our budget season, that number, that chart that's on the top that shows you by grade
Yeah.
will be a part of every single one of our presentations.
And then one last question, then Shannon, if you could, and when we get to the next Board of Education, you only have 3 years of minutes. And I know that the Board of Ed keeps the minutes at the school. Can you sit there and bring up maybe that they should be kept at the town hall and the town clerk's office when you fill up, so that if people want to go backwards and look at minutes and see what happened in previous board meetings, that it's available, because we cannot go over to the school and get that information. And the only thing I see online is 3 years.
Information, is that,
Excuse me?
the information's available at the school.
At the school, but you can't go over there during the middle of the day.
We're responsible, we are responsible, if you look up any of the state statutes in terms of records, we are responsible to keep those records for a certain amount of time and in order to keep them there. So if you want your person to make copies of anything, I'm more than happy to open up whatever they need to make copies, but our records are kept there.
No, I do understand that, and I do understand that other boards will sit there and, you know, you have a book and a binder, and they're online. If they were all online, this would not be an issue, but they're not all online.
Well, where we're different, Jeff, is that in a larger town, there's a central office.
Yeah.
And a central office for
That's true.
schools, it's always kept there. Unfortunately, I am central office, so they're kept where my office is. So again, I'm really not trying to be challenging, but if anybody needs anything copied, they can come and take them from where I would be considered central office.
It would just be
Our records need
easier,
to stay
it
with
would be
us.
easier if there was a separate copy in the town clerk's office.
Again,
Just
if the
saying.
town clerk, agreed, if the town clerk would like to copy them, I'm amenable to that, I am.
Okay.
But ours stay with us, thank you.
If we were to ask for them via email, would we receive them like in a PDF packet?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Tell us which ones you need, I absolutely will get them for you.
Okay.
I have a question. You mentioned, are you expecting to hire another teacher for 6th grade now?
For next
This year?
school year, no, for the budget for next year.
So right now, it looks like
We're at 28 children right now.
well, there's 25 children in 6th grade, or in 5th grade.
Yes.
There's 25 children in 5th grade, so that would be
Oh, yeah,
next year,
yeah.
there would be 25.
Yes,
You're saying
Because
you need
right
next term?
now, I was looking at the current enrollment. Because right now, yes, fourth and fifth grade, we did separate them. And that's our intent is to keep them separated moving forward.
Wait,
Yes,
I don't
to keep two, because once you merge the back and you're looking at 25 to 28 or 29 kids, we find that with this group of fourth, fifth, and sixth grade kids and the needs, that it's a necessity for us.
It's a necessity to have 25 children separated into two classes, like grade 6 when they're going to be moving on to a big high school.
This particular group of children, yes. We would have done it last year, but we didn't need to do it with this group of sixth graders with the use of intervention. So keep in mind, I do have a track record here in the past 6 years of not only saving money by combining classes when the group of children allowed us to do that. They didn't have a lot of needs, if you remember correctly. I had 2 years of a 2-3 combination rather than adding an additional class, because with those children, we could do that. It wasn't the most ideal situation, but we made it work. We had a combination for 2 years. Last year, with the sixth grade that was there and the fifth grade last year, we did have larger classes last year. So for some students, it works. I do have, I think, a good history of making sure that we meet the needs of all the kids. And sometimes having 28 kids in a class is not an issue. I'm not a proponent of saying that class sizes have to be very small. I don't believe that. Sometimes they are too small when you get, to the weeds of things. But I do believe that we are ready to have that second class next year for those kids and their needs.
It's like for the grade behind it, it's got 36 too.
I was gonna say.
Right. So you're right, Robert, we'd be kicking the can for one more year at the expense of the needs of these kids going into sixth grade. And we know, Robert, that separating them, for anybody who watched Taylor's presentation at the board meeting, and I urge you during the course of this year to watch more of her presentations. We have already seen in the first 2 months of school a difference having those 2 fifth grade classes. We've seen that we do the beginning of the year benchmarks, the middle of the year benchmarks, the end of the year benchmarks. Those teachers have already seen a difference with us having those classes at a more reasonable size. They're thriving as opposed to last year. So,
I had sixth grade last year.
so
I got
Robert.
stories from her.
How old is what grade is your kid?
She's in 7th now. She started in red.
Yeah.
But she had some things to say about her class and
Yeah. So yes, and again, like I said, I do have a track record
It's like 20.
of saving money when we can, if it was something that we could do with merging classes. Trust me, it wasn't popular with parents when we had to take the 2-3 combo, and we did it for 2 years. I think, Robert, you had one that was there at the time as well. And it wasn't their first choice, but I did explain to them, how we were gonna meet the needs of the kids, and the fact we did it for 2 years. And it was appropriate to do it during those 2 years, instead of asking for another class. So, I do stand by that. Sometimes, sure, 25 or 28 kids in a class is appropriate. It just isn't with these upper grades right now.
Working in a school too, you need to know it's not just teaching the kids and preparing the material every day. I mean, I personally think 11 is too small because you want socialization and that, but the phone calls you get from the parents, the follow-up, the meetings, everything you have to prepare with for each individual student. I would never believe anything over 20. I mean, I think 25 is really pushing it. That's just from being in a school, taking all the phone calls, knowing what these teachers have to prepare each and every day. It's a lot. So if I could have that 2 cents there. So, yeah, anything in the 20, over 20 for a teacher, I don't know how to do it, but.
And Joanne,
Maybe there are, like you said, a group that don't have a lot of needs, or individuals, or parents that are calling every other day that want to talk to the principal about what the teacher's doing. There's that aspect that we do need to bring into it too. just from my experience of working in a school system.
But to that point, Joanne, if you look, I know it might be difficult this year for us to say, okay, we're gonna support the school and we're gonna do that. We're gonna, as a group, say, that's what we have to do is bite the bullet. But if you look then at this enrollment, we'll have taken that hit to go back to the 2 in every grade. But then if you look at the numbers, it'll be a very long time, unless we build huge projects in Andover. It'll be a very long time before we would ever have to revisit, I should say, adding a 3rd class someplace. Where years ago, there were 3 classes to grades when the numbers were high in Andover. And if you look here, you'll see that that's not something that would probably be in any of our lifetimes in looking at the budget. We would have done that work and we would have gotten to that point and we would have the sufficient number of classrooms for K-6 and we'll be okay then. You'll see that. There's a lot of room to grow then after that. So we'll be okay when we're looking at that the following year or years after that, so.
So if we go through this list, could you just tell us, so I can write next to the grades, pre-K, how many teachers are there?
There's 4 classrooms, so there's 4
4
teachers.
teachers?
That's not a part of this budget. That's not a part of this budget.
Look at the second to last column.
So there's 1 4th grade class? No.
No, there's 4
No,
teachers.
there's 2.
2 4th grade classes.
Oh, I'm
of
sorry.
18 each.
I'm in pre-K.
Oh, I see where you're at. And so each one of these, so there's 4 teachers on the first line and then 2 teachers in each one of the other grades.
Correct.
That's 6.
Correct. And you know what? I will correct, I see down
Yeah,
there,
so it'd be 2.
Rosemary never corrected this, and I've never noticed it, so that's my bad too. 4th and 5th, she never corrected that, second to last line, right? Because this is only the second month of the school year, so, but yes, there are 2 there.
Yeah.
So it's 2, 2, 2, and 1 in 6th grade.
Correct.
And your goal is to have 2 in 6th grade next year.
Yes,
And keep 2 teachers in all of the other grades.
Correct.
Good.
Jeff, if I'm correct, and I don't know that I am, and we'll get you the exact figures. When we first started pre-K, and I don't know what it was by the time of 2020 or so, we had approximately 20 kids in it. Each classroom had, less than 10 when we first started. We did have, I don't know if we went 1 and immediately to 2, but we had only 2 classrooms by the time Val arrived in 2020. So if we take that and it's 20 to 25 students in pre-K by that point, and we take out the 60 students now, we've had an increase of 30, 35 to 40 students, so not the 11 you're talking
Yeah,
about.
I'm not debating the number that Valerie told us of 40, I'm just trying to get to the number,
Yeah, I
trying to get
understand,
to
I
that.
just was trying to
Yeah,
tell
because,
you my math.
like, we could come and look at this, Shannon, and go in 2023, 2024, we only had 206 students. And then next year, we had 240, and that entire increase was pre-K.
no, because follow that 206 in October
Yeah,
down to June.
yeah,
On that sheet.
Yeah.
I circled October because the number that we have to report to the state is an October 1st number.
Yeah.
But if you look from August to June, every year we had kids come mid-year.
correct, and I understand that, and I can live with 219, but the difference between 219 and the 240 was all pre-K. You had a huge jump in pre-K.
That was when we opened the fourth
Correct, you
class.
opened up and you did all the recognition
Absolutely.
and all that.
So that's
stuff.
why they're minus from my 186 on
That's
the
fine,
top.
and,
Yes.
and that's what we have to,
Yeah.
we have to look at.
Bless you. Yes. Any other questions?
Any other questions on the school budget?
I do, I have a question. Your 6th grade class, so you want to split them up. Is there a para in that class right now? with
There
you?
is not. What we do instead is, there are academic subjects where the team splits. So, the 4th, 5th, and 6th grade is in, 5th and 6th grade is in one wing. And there is a 4th classroom that is used for Spanish, and when it's not used for Spanish, it is used to work with other smaller groups. So this is where we've been able to put a Band-Aid on this for this year is, for example, when they do math. When they do math, there are students that are at one need level, there are students at another need level, and we have the math interventionist that will work with students in one room, and the classroom teacher will work with students in the other. So we're able to right now split groups for certain content areas to work in smaller groups, because a lot of those students have those individualized needs anyways, but it's not ideal. And like I said, this is the year that we are also looking at those students that now in the 4th and 5th grade have been split, thanks to the fact that we got the new 4th and 5th grade teachers there, and we're seeing them thrive. And so that's gonna continue through next year.
So if the class is split, are you planning on hiring paras for the class is split? When you split the 6th grade class?
We don't hire paraprofessionals, our school does not have paraprofessionals.
Whatever.
Nope, we don't have regular ed paras
Okay,
in our school. All of our paraprofessionals in our school, and we have a very small percentage of paras in comparison to a lot of neighboring towns. All of our paras are hired for a specific need. Maybe it's one child that they're hired to work with. Maybe it's to accommodate a few children that have a particular need written into an IEP or a 504. So they might work with different students during the course of the day. But we don't have in our building any para that is there just as a regular education para to work in a room because the teacher has a lot of kids.
Okay.
So you now have, okay, but the preschool they have 4 paras.
They do, and that's not in the general budget, that's
Right.
in the tuition, but
Right.
that's because the law requires that when you have a certain number of students in a pre-K room, you
Right.
must have the paraprofessional.
Okay, got that.
Yeah.
But you hired extra paras this year. I think, how many do you have now in the school? Just out of curiosity, from 6 paras in the K through 6?
In K through 6, I believe, yes, there are 6.
And you're saying that each of those are,
Have assignments related to children, yes. Yes.
That's why the need for the 2nd and 6th grade class coming up.
If there is a 504 student, or if there is an IEP student, their document says what is required for support. And so, yes, those 6 paraprofessionals,
are basically assigned to one student.
not necessarily one student, they said they're assigned to students that have identified needs.
They might have identified needs for maybe certain subjects, or?
So if you were a paraliz, you may be working in one classroom with one student in the morning because it's the math time. And that particular student requires support in math per their IEP.
Okay.
But then in the afternoon, you might be assigned to another student in another grade completely someplace else. Or that classroom has 2 or 3 students in it that say they need support during reading. So it's not necessarily you have one student, but maybe there's 3 in that grade, and you're assigned in the afternoon to go in and work with the teacher because there's 3 students that are identified. So, it is, I'm a former special ed director,
It's
so.
all part of the special ed process.
right.
And the
Yeah,
IEP stands for
some
individualized
Right.
educational plan, right? So, yeah. And then it's written in the documents what they
Right.
have. No, I know you understand that.
Yeah.
but I never
My
knew
daughter
how
loves
many-
a special
Okay,
how
so-
many either, yeah.
It's 8 o'clock now. I would like to move on to the next section, and if we have time at the end, we can come back and have more fun questions.
Yeah, I can.
The next up then is Board of Selectmen and Town Administrator. Identify major items and affect future costs in the 26-27 budget year in projecting the next 5 years.
Eric, do you want to take it since you're still getting paid, or would you like me to?
Sure. So, a couple things that are looming. One, we're notified that the Northeast COG is no longer going to provide animal control services to the town. That's a little annoying. The reason why this is critical is we're going to have to find another town that's willing to take us on as a shared service. And the reason why we don't just take it back internally is that our animal control holding facility is so far out of date that we would be looking at building a standalone building. Animal control facilities are required to be air conditioned today. And there is an expectation from the state that if there's not a full-time monitor there, there's at least a part-time staff person assigned to the animal control facility. And given the number of animals that we take care of on a yearly basis, that's a crazy, there's no way we're gonna devote one person, have a part-time employee down there every day, because most of the days there's no dogs there. So that's something that we're gonna have to deal with as a shared service. As of July 1 of this year, the new AFSCME contract will be, we will have a new, well, I'm not saying we'll have a new AFSCME contract, because usually we don't end up negotiating them until well after the year, because the union doesn't bother to negotiate with us for that few employees. But there will be a new AFSCME contract effective July 1 of this year.
2026.
Correct. So in terms of other things, overall, fuel and electricity both do not seem like we're going to see major spikes in them. On the electrical front, the legislature has been hammering away at utility company, which is kind of ironic because it was mostly the legislature forcing them to do energy efficiency projects and accept a certain fraction of nuclear power and other things, which drove the rates up in the first place. Not that I don't agree with the intent of what they were doing, because I do, but it did have a big effect on consumers, and they're backing off a lot of that now. So I think that should, over the next couple of years, stabilize our electrical costs, hopefully. If anything, they should be decreasing slightly. Fuel costs obviously are very volatile. By switching to propane, we've reduced the overall cost of fuel for the town hall relatively considerably. And the town hall now has the capability to be heated and cooled both with ductless split AC systems and with a propane boiler, at least on the heating end. And we did that because that hedges our bets on fuel costs. The propane's running really high, we can use mostly ductless splits. If propane, stays relatively low, it's more efficient to run off the boiler in the winter. So I anticipate our costs for energy are going to be pretty stable. So from the town's perspective, the biggest real concern is capital projects, because that's essentially what the biggest variability is in our funding. The two biggest dollar value projects that we have going are Bunker Hill Bridge, which is about 75% complete at this point, and the bridge at Long Hill Road, which will start next April. Both of those are fully funded between federal dollars and state dollars and money from the Investment and Jobs Act, which is federal dollars. So those are in pretty good shape. We did delay the replacement of the culvert/bridge on Lake Road at Basola. And hopefully we can make it another year without a significant failure of that structure. The end wall of that is completely gone. It very definitely does need to be replaced, but the engineer seems to think we can drive over it for another year without having a catastrophic collapse. So that's what we're doing.
Have to keep that in mind when I was gonna say.
I was
Not driving around there anymore.
The Greenville boss just sent us, that's another $1 million project for us, right? It's a 50/50 grant.
Yeah, so that's a 50/50 state-funded project. We have been putting money away in the Bridge and Culvert Fund annually. And as you noted in 2023, part of the reason we saw a big increase on the town side is we started increasing the funding for capital projects to get more of those done. So by the time we do the bridge in 2027 at current funding levels, it won't take an increase in funding, but we will have to keep money into it at that point. Hopefully in about 1.5 years, when we're substantially completed with the Long Hill Bridge, the money that we're currently using in that fund can then be rolled into the next culvert project. And to put it in perspective, there are still 6 more culverts that are rated poor or failing in the town of Andover, and most of those are between $500,000 and $1.5 million projects. So we are just simply addressing them at the rate at which the public is willing to give us funding and hoping to stay ahead of catastrophic failure. The only one that's really failed completely is the one on Hutchinson. As many of you know, that's been necked down to 1 lane because both lanes are not safe anymore. So we've necked that down to a 1-lane road. And it only affects a few residents. So that's really been the push on the town side. And the bulk of the increase in spending on the town side has been capital funding. Can that be trimmed? It can, but it just slows down the rate. And for the most part, our goals have been to stay ahead of major failure events. We have had some really good successes. Starting in around 2020, we considerably upped the annual budget every year for tree trimming. We've also been incredibly successful with getting Eversource to collaborate with us on routes in town. So if you look at it over a 5-year period, we put in about $250,000 into tree trimming, and we got Eversource to contribute around $400,000 to our tree trimming in the town. And as most of you have noticed over the last few years, we've had very little storm-related damage in the town. And I've always judged it, we have 34 miles of road. The rail trail runs through, we have 5.5 miles of rail trail. And most storms today, we're getting twice as many trees down on the rail trail as we're getting on the whole rest of our trail network, or our whole road network. So we've been very successful with that. The other thing, frankly, that the town faces, which everybody faces, is the cost increases in equipment. When I look back in 2019, we bought a plow truck for around $193,000. The one that was purchased before that was $137,000. The one we bought after that was $260,000, and a plow truck today is, well over $300,000. In fact, the last vehicle we got, we stopped by Peterbilt, which were a better vehicle, just simply because the cost basis for buying them was too high. So it's on the capital end, we've kind of held Public Works to a capital budget, and that's been working reasonably well. The cost of liquid asphalt has stabilized the last 2 years. There was a huge spike in it, which really drives the cost of paving, but that's leveled off the last couple of years because that tracks very closely with the cost of oil. So hopefully that stays fairly stable. The goal is to continue to shim and chip the remaining roads that have not yet been shim and chipped, and there's about a quarter of the town in that category. Those should all be addressed within the next year, basically. So we will have done one cycle of leveling the roads and shimming them. The next big thing we're gonna have to consider doing is a chip seal is a Band-Aid. You can only do that so many times, and eventually you have to start, either just repaving or reclaiming and repaving. And that's an expensive proposition. Today, reclaim and repave is about $500,000 a mile, and we have $34 million or 34 miles of road.
Wow.
So you can do the math, that's a pretty expensive proposition to do. So at some point, we're gonna have to start switching over to a plan which is less shim and chip seal and then selective rebuilding roads. We don't have a lot of roads that were built properly from the ground up. We're an old colonial town, so most of these roads were cart paths, that never really had a proper subbase. So that's part of our issue. We've done an awful lot of work addressing drainage throughout town. We've had some pretty major improvements. The next kind of big project Public Works needs to tackle in terms of road work is killing me. It's the road. Having a brain fart here.
Which way? Which direction?
It's the road off of Burnout Brook.
The road off.
Wales?
Not Wales.
Ridge Road.
Ridge Road. Ridge Road was poorly built. We've looked at the drainage extensively. I think we can rebuild part of that road without, the good news is that the culverts in the road are concrete culverts. And the pipes are concrete. It's just that the original design of the road was really poor. We have problems plowing it every year. We break springs in the plow truck every single year plowing that road. So that has to be rebuilt and built correctly. But we probably don't have the money right now to do a full reclaim and repave. So what we're gonna do is basically just reshape the bad parts, and then shim and chip the rest of that. So I think we can live within the existing Public Works road work budget. The one thing I'd say, I'm not saying we have going for us, because it's not an advantage, but because we didn't have a Public Works supervisor for most of the summer, we did not do the second half of road work. So we do have, a fair bit of money sitting in that fund. But remember, 1 mile of reclaiming 1 mile of road in Andover would wipe out a year of our road work fund. So it doesn't get you a whole heck of a lot. We have several other major capital projects that we are in the works. The first is the improvements at the athletic fields. So we currently have a $500,000 steep grant for the pickleball courts, the new playgrounds, and a pavilion and lighting for the pickleball courts. We were also able to get a $250,000 legislative appropriation. And we previously allocated money from our multi-use building fund, about $150,000 for that. And we also got a $10,000 Hartford Foundation for Public Giving grant for that. So that project will take up every bit of that money. In fact, we've shifted some of the work back from the contractor to Public Works so we could get it under the allotment that we had for that. So all the money for that project is either state grant funded or it's money that the town has already put in a capital fund. The next real big project on the town's side, other than that, there's 2 additional projects. The first is the tear down of the old firehouse / senior center and replacing that with a garage. That project, we do have a steep grant to fund a portion of that. Town meeting has already allocated some money from the multi-use building fund. And my suggestion to the boards has been that we use our LoCIP state dollars to fill out the rest of that. And if we do that, that will not affect any ongoing taxation. And then there's kind of 2 more big projects. The first is finishing off the community center, finishing off the basement, and then secondarily, the generator that is located at the fire department. That generator goes back to 1990. So it is in need of replacement. And one of the problems we've had in this building up to this point is, although we're ADA compliant when we have power, we're not ADA compliant when we don't have power, because we don't have the juice to run the elevator. So the goal is to put in a single generator that runs all 3 buildings. It runs the community center, it runs this building, and it runs the firehouse at full capacity. That allows us to use the town hall as our emergency operations center, which it is. It allows us to use the community center as an emergency shelter and keep operations going. And it allows the fire department to function. Now, currently, we're awaiting word on whether we've gotten a legislative appropriation from the federal government. We've asked for around $300,000 from the federal government, and it made it through the Senate Appropriations Committee. But it made it through the Senate Appropriations Committee last year too, and then they didn't fund any appropriations. So politically, it's anybody's guess whether they're going to come to some kind of agreement, pass a budget, and fund appropriations or not. So if we get that funding, we would use that funding plus an additional $250,000 in state legislative appropriations that we got, that we will have as of July 1 next year. So the good news is the 3 big projects that we have rolling right now are funded from either town money that taxpayers have already paid into permanent funds, or state or federal dollars. So we've been pretty successful with that. And then the last thing that's hanging out there is the multi-use pathway.
Can I, sorry to interrupt you, the whole generator linking the 3 buildings for that project, how much is the total cost for something like that?
The generator alone is about $300K, something like that. Because it's a fairly large generator. Now, we've already kind of prepped everything, and that when we built the community center, we paid for ahead of time and we put in all the conduit for the electrical, and we ran the gas line to all the buildings, and we have the gas line, and we put the extra 2 propane tanks, and we have an interlock between us and the fire department. So most of the year, the fire department fills their tanks, we fill our tanks. In an emergency, there's a valve that opens all 4 tanks, so we have full capacity for the generator and to back up all the buildings. So we've done all the pre-work, and we will have installed the automatic transfer switches in the community center and in here. But it's still an expensive project to do.
The funds you said you were taking it from, that's why I'm like, I need to know how much this whole project.
Yeah, no, it's no question, and then to finish off the basement of the community center. And that's gonna kind of depend to some extent on the Board of Selectmen making final decisions, hopefully in conjunction with the community center staff, as to what exactly they want to program that for. Because how you finish it off is kind of dependent on what you're gonna use it for.
And that's in future years, you're giving us an overview of projects, not just this upcoming year, correct?
So if we get the federal legislative funding, I would assume we would go out to bid sometime late May, early June, assuming that we have the state funding sometime after July 1, and that would be a project done fall of next year, so next budget cycle. And the last thing is the multi-use pathway that connects from here down to the rail trail. So we're a little bit stalled out on the design. We would need to come up with and budget roughly $100,000 to complete that design. We did apply for what's called LOTSIP, which is a transportation-based funding from the Department of Transportation that's passed through the Capital Regional Council of Governments. So we have a $2.9 million essentially construction funding that we've already gotten. We've gone through the first rounds of comments with DOT, we've addressed them, we need to send it back and get their final commitment to fund letter. But we already have a preliminary commitment to fund letter. The way those programs work is we're on the hook to do the design, and then we can 100% fund the cost of construction. The other good thing about the Capital Regional Council of Governments is that if the price increases, because, you know, we did that, we submitted that a year and a half ago based on prices at the time. The COG is pretty reasonable about accepting price increases for projects. Like, we may get comments back from the DOT, and they may require us to do improvements for them for Route 316, which drive the price up. If that happens, we can go back to the CROG with the expectation that they will increase the budget for that project.
And I remember asking you about that particular project, because that's a biggie at our meeting when you presented on our last meeting.
Yep.
That one's in the future, because there's so many things that have to happen. And I mean, I know this is,
Yep.
you know,
If you're lucky, it'll be
probably
in
a dream of
construction.
yours. I mean, you've liked this and have been into that, but, so you said we had 100,000, that would be for to finish the design element of it.
Yeah.
Is that the full cost of the design, or is that?
No, so.
I don't want to take up
So
too
I
much
secured
time.
$100,000 legislative grant
Mhm.
a couple of years ago.
Right.
And I used that money to do, essentially the big picture design, pick a pathway, and then produce a preliminary design to go for funding. And then I had a bunch of money left over, and I applied that money towards the design and survey work. So the $100,000, in truth, that's probably closer to $200,000 in design work. But 100,000 of that would have already been a legislative appropriation. There's a second pathway back through here, which I know is going to take cooperation from a lot of entities. We've let out the design contract for that. That also went to town meeting. That's a 20% town match and roughly an 80,000. And I suspect that design will take about a year. And if the town was smart, in a year, you would turn around and apply the lots of funding. Because you would have a full-blown design, and if you got lots of funding, that would be 100% of the construction. So you could theoretically do that without spending a dime of Andover tax dollars, which is usually my objective. So that's what we've got going for projects. So we are spending a fair bit of town money. I'm not gonna deny that, but we're also spending millions in state and federal dollars too. So we're getting an awful lot done for what we're spending. That's it, unless you have other questions for me.
Any other questions for Eric?
Thank you. Thank you for all your hard work and getting all those grants and,
We're not done.
I know.
We have other problems with the town that we're gonna do at the Board of Finance. Eric leaving leaves a huge hole, and we have to determine as to how we're hiring. So the goal will be to go out and get an interim town manager, town administrator, but how we sit there and look at the position moving forward is gonna be different, because there's gotta be discussions as to the compensation that is paid on that position. So right now, it's at one level. We may not be able to get a qualified person at that level. We might need to make some adjustments, but that's also something that has to be taken into account. So when you look at next year's budget, you're gonna have potentially an increase at that level. Also, one of the priorities that the Board of Selectmen has is the community center, and it's maximizing the availability of the community center and what benefits are leveled for the seniors and for the rest of the community as far as using that building. I would hope we would come to you guys with some plan as to what we could do to sit there and make better use of that building, and like I said, extend the hours, because that's really the biggest issue for me, to make as much use of it as possible. And Eric's done a great job of getting funding to sit there and finish off the building. So as of right now, our kitchen is not complete because we don't have the hood in place, but we're gonna sit there and work to get that done. Once the kitchen is done, all the lunches can sit there and be dealt with out of that building, and it could also be used for rental purposes. So we have the senior center and community center to consider. So those two are the two things from my end, because reality is, from a town level, we have been very conservative as to how much money we're spending. I don't think anyone can sit there and look at the town level and go, it has increased because we've added additional employees, or we've added a significant amount of services. The only thing that has been added from that perspective is the one additional person in Public Works, which I think is extremely effective and has gotten more done for the town in the last 5 to 6 years than has been done in the past. And then the employees over at the community center. There hasn't been any increase in staffing levels at the town hall, and there hasn't been any increases at the library. So those really are only our two increases from an employee base for the town. Agree or disagree, Eric, from what I'm saying to you?
Yes, so over the last 6 years, we've basically shifted a series of town hall staff to part-time, so we've reduced, town hall staffing overall is, significantly lower than it was 6 years ago. We have added staff to Public Works, and we have added staff to the community center.
And so from that standpoint, I don't think anyone in the community can sit there and think that we are going to the Board of Finance and asking for any significant level of increase that hasn't been justified as to the service level that you've received as taxpayers. So if not, I'd really like to know about that. So, but we are going to come, because we are going to have problems replacing Eric. It will not be an easy situation, and it will be financially impactful for the town, and we're all going to have to get together and understand that if we want to keep moving forward. Because my fear with the community is that, chaos in every organization causes problems. We can see it at every level of government. We can see it in any business. You have chaos in your organization, you cause problems. We've had a slight bit of chaos within our boards and within our town, and it's caused problems. And if you all can't see it, you just look at Eric's resignation as number one on my list of things that I knew were coming that I didn't want to see ever happen to this town while I was sitting here. So I am telling you, we have problems. And I'll go through it. We've lost our Department of Public Works director. We've lost our maintainer, our best maintainer, our oldest maintainer. We're going to lose our treasurer, all right? We'll sit there and deal with that. And we have other positions within this town because of some of our chaos, self-induced, that we have to deal with. But really, we need to sit there and be really cognizant of the fact and work together as boards. Like one thing, I participated in the Board of Education meeting, and I understood that there's freedom of information requests being positioned back and forth between departments within this town. That should never happen, ever. I was so disappointed when I found out that the treasurer sat there and gave the Board of Education a freedom of information request for information. I understand what the treasurer might be after, but submitting a freedom of information request against another board or a town group is not okay for me. And that the Board of Education, in turn, sent freedom of information requests to the town is not okay for me. And so I am just telling you, I'm telling you all, as boards, we either work together and share all of the information so that we can make good decisions, or we're going to have bigger problems. And I'm just letting everybody know those big problems are coming. And one of the things, we have this disconnect on capital projects, and listen, I won't even go into that. I'll just sit there and tell you, every board needs to understand what that board's responsibilities are. Every board, even my board, we need to sit there and take the time to understand what our responsibilities are. So we do play in our roles, we respect the other groups, we do what they need to do what they need to do, and we need to do what we need to do. But every board has to understand where they're at. I look at my board as we are the group that sets the priorities for the town, and we sit there and come up with a budget for capital projects, and we come up with a budget to operate the town and do the basic work that the town needs to have done. We walk that budget to the Board of Finance, and you guys determine if that budget is acceptable for what you can raise in taxes from the community, right? You sit there and say, these things are good or these are bad, and we then take it back and we work within those parameters of what you're giving us. And Eric has done a phenomenal job of working within what the Board of Finance has provided us to provide levels of service that are acceptable for the community. Right? But I will sit there and tell you, as long as we understand all of our roles, we'll all work together as easily as possible. And we should never, ever, if I hear of another Freedom of Information request going back and forth, I will be so disheartened, because that's not how we should work. Share the information, and even if you get what you don't consider to be a reasonable answer, maybe some board is unreasonable and they just, we all work with it. It's not a negative, I don't take it as a negative, but sharing information and understanding what we're after is really critical as this town moves forward. And it's really, from a town's perspective, Board of Selectmen's perspective, I cannot tell you how upset I am at the changes that have occurred. And Eric, I do thank you for all you've done, for all the grants that you've sat there and got for this town, and all the work that you've done to try to sit there and make us better off than when we had a first selectman sitting in this chair. And I thank you for not making me do it. Right? Because I will tell you, and this is what everybody in this town needs to understand, there will be people coming and saying, let's change the charter again and get away from the town administrator. Do not do that.
That would be disaster.
It would be an absolute disaster.
It will be steps backwards like you cannot imagine.
We're already losing a
People have
ton of
no
institutional knowledge here.
It's terrible.
You didn't even touch on it, but we're gonna have
Taking
to
his
turn
house
the board
and-
chair and vice chair come November.
Listen,
That's the Board of Finance right there, too, so.
It takes so long to just get the knowledge, that you learn. But Jeff, I like that you brought it forward, that you want to look at the position. I feel like Eric in his role had to do so much, and I mean,
we're too small to ask for, what I'm saying, they're saying, you're not gonna get multiple people in your position. You're gonna get one person. But what we have to decide is what type of person, and Board of Selectmen will come to you, but I
Right.
already know in my head.
Right, I know.
It's either
Yeah.
we overpay, and we pay more and get more in a reasonable range. Because Eric, what were you in position? You've said it to me multiple times. How far down on the pecking order are you of town administrators, town manager?
I'm pretty sure I'm the lowest paid one in the state of Connecticut.
That is because the Board of Finance does a damn good job. We negotiated the contract. We negotiated the contract. Eric negotiated on his behalf. So we have a problem.
Yeah.
And just understand that the opportunities are raise the pay, on pay, maybe reasonably close to what we're doing, and get a less qualified individual. And honestly, I will sit there and just tell you, it probably took you, 2 years to get good at it?
At least.
I don't know that I'm good at it.
No, you are very good at it. How long did it take you to get reasonably comfortable in the position?
A couple of years.
Couple of years. To me, it was a couple of years.
But remember, the first problem was we had a public works that was disaster. So I spent the first year essentially being the public works supervisor until we could get an actual public works supervisor. And that killed an enormous amount of time. So that was a structural problem we had at the time. And frankly, that occurred because at some point, the Board of Selectmen decided to get rid of the public works supervisor back when there was a 5 to 6 person public works department. And the only way they could do it without running afoul of the law was to eliminate the position. So they took the most senior public works employee at the time and said, "You're now the supervisor." And that was frankly a disaster. He was a great guy. He worked his ever-loving butt off for the town, but he couldn't use a computer, he couldn't use a smartphone, he couldn't send texts, he couldn't use email, and that's who we had running Public Works for, 10 years. And at the same time, the Board of Selectmen wasn't investing in equipment. So that killed a specific, once I had that off my plate and I had a Public Works supervisor in place that could run that, because that is the biggest single department and expense, on the town side, then it was pretty quick. I just needed to free up the time.
That's what I meant about you doing too much. I think your knowledge is extensive of the town and like the land and like rules and, that there's the management part and the financial part and then the public works part. You were involved in all of that. So you probably brought it to the point where when you have those structures at the top, like Jeff says, like how many people are in your public works department right now? I feel like the town has lost so many employees.
We're back up to, we're 4 today. As of November 3rd, we will have a new public works supervisor, be staff.
Because I know those probably have terrible, so you have that, but then you have the treasury finance side, and then you like overseeing it with your, yeah. But you were in all the ground roots parts too, like on the roads and.
You sat here and listened to Eric tonight, like we have at every board of finance meeting, go through the administrator's report. It's mind-boggling what this man knows and does every week, the hours he puts in. People have no clue what we have compared to the old days. This man's knowledge, just what he reported to all of us tonight, you're in deep shit right now. That's the best way to put it, when he's gone, because it's gonna take a long time to fill those shoes. I don't know if anybody gets that, but I've listened to what he's done, the reports that he gives at every Board of Finance meeting, and my head just spins that he knows and has a grasp of all of this. So,
Without notes.
good luck, town, Andover.
Usually without notes.
Good luck. I know those people that, complain about Eric or this, that, and other thing, didn't get along with him. They don't know what he does. You know, the hours that he puts in every single week, so.
The other thing I'd like to chime in about with what Jeff was saying about, how we pay to staff this position. We had a prior administrator. I don't know how many people were I was on the board of finance at the time. Yeah. It was a while back now. People may have kind of forgotten because COVID was in between and screwed up time. But that didn't work out. Let's just put it that way. And we didn't pay a lot, and we got someone who frankly couldn't do the job, and we had to move on. And luckily, we fluked into Eric. But
No, we compromised. To be really honest, I don't know if you know that Eric was elected to the Board of Selectmen. And we compromised because we as a board worked together to put what we thought was the best possible person into that position, understanding that he did not have the true qualifications that were even written into what we were doing to be the town administrator. But we understood his character and what he was bringing to us, and we, as a board, understood there would be growing pains. So we have to understand that as a town, we could try to do it this way and go through growing pains again, re-go through what we did, and maybe not get the right result, or we could try to overcompensate, give additional compensation to that role, and try to get somebody with a better quality, not better than Eric, but more qualified than we.
You can get a better administrator than me. I have no doubt about that. I see in some of my peers' capabilities that I don't have.
Do you have any recommendations? Are you gonna set recommendations?
Yeah, but what he's gonna tell you next is how much money you have to pay to get.
Right, but you're not, the town just has to understand that if you want that, you're going to have to pay for that. And you're gonna have to search nationally. The job I interviewed for in Dalton, I think there was only 1 out of the 5 interviewed candidates that were from Massachusetts. They did a nationwide search. They pulled people from plenty of states to make their decision. And that's what you have to do today. there are too few administrators, and there are too many positions open, and you're competing against all the other towns. And unlike Connecticut, most of the towns north of here, most of the cities have town manager forms of government, even very small towns. I mean, Waterville, New Hampshire has a population of 850. Their town manager makes quite a bit more than I make here. You know, you just gotta ante up if you're gonna be competitive in that particular market, or you have to try something unusual, which is what the board did with me. And maybe that'll work, maybe it won't.
This is an unusual town though, too, I have to say. From living in other towns, there's never been a town like this, with so many opinions, so many people getting involved, so much venom being spewed all over the place, people being not respected in meetings, so we all have, people talking things behind people's back when you think things are fine. I mean, there's a lot of ugliness in this town, let's be real. I hope they ante it up, and I understand what you want to run this town. There's also some real bad things that go on in this town, that it's so small.
I don't think.
It's so small, and against people that give of their time and their free will.
We are all volunteers.
Absolutely.
We are all volunteers, but a lot of volunteers like to throw stones. So
Yes.
you all have to understand
Yes.
that if you're going to be in
I
this
don't like
position.
negativity.
Yeah, well, you know, what I like is data and information, and if I can get the data and information, I, as a business owner, and even though this is not a business, I can make a business decision. I can give you what is right for the community, right? It might not be right for a given department, and I respect that, and I can listen. You know, what I have a problem with, really, and I will tell you, my managerial style, I let everybody go. You do what you want, right? I can handle bad news, you tell it to me to my face. And I can sit there
Same.
and live with bad news. I cannot live with people lying. And I cannot live with people not giving me everything that they should be giving me. That is my end all be all in my work, in my life. I can respect a bad decision. I can respect that you made a mistake. Just tell me, be forthright, and don't make me go dig and do other things that I have to do. So in this town, we do like to throw stones. There's been a lot of back channeling. Back channeling causes chaos. Chaos has ensued.
I'm just.
No one listens.
Guys, I don't know if we get that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry.
That was just, it needed to be said.
Yeah,
I hope
I like the
we
fact that there's a
forward
love
bring
fest for Eric.
positivity. Yeah.
Really?
But I get where we're going, and I just think it's important that we
Yeah.
work together, we're transparent, it has to happen. It's
Professional.
Not gonna work.
Yeah.
But let me be clear, I didn't leave the town of Andover because of the salary. I left the town of Andover because of the chaos.
Okay.
And that has to be understood by the rest of the community.
Yeah, that's sad, I'm sorry to hear
That
that.
is very sad.
Okay, well, I think we have shifted into board open discussion.
You think?
You did.
And any other topics that we should include under that?
Well, while we're talking about paying people, I think we have significantly underpaid our town clerk for many, many years. And that may eventually affect us as well. I know for a fact that there were many years when our town clerk went without an increase in pay. And I think that may have affected a decision there, I don't know. But I think we're looking at a comeuppance there as well, at some point, to have qualified people.
It's an elected position.
I know it's an elected position, we also have to pay, or we're not gonna be able to fill the position.
If it was appointed, I would 100% agree with you, Shannon. But because it's an elected position, it has little different parameters. That's not to say we shouldn't try to pay a reasonable salary, but it is a difference. If we
Well, I
had gone
understand.
through the
I agree
charter
with you.
revision and we sit there and had to appoint a town clerk, I would tell you flat out, we'd have to be raising the compensation.
Yeah.
No problem. But because it is an elected position, that's less of a problem.
It's less of a problem, but we lost an assistant clerk over that very reason. And
No,
what we did,
we lost the assistant clerk
No.
because she couldn't take the position.
no, another one, but never mind.
Okay.
Any
Are you
other?
talking, wait, are you talking the assistant town clerk or the town clerk?
Assistant town clerk.
The assistant town clerk, okay, so you said the town clerk, so
No, I
assistant.
said
no.
assistant.
No, you said town clerk.
They said
Well,
that.
You said town clerk.
she said, well,
I heard assistant.
whatever.
Assistant was the second time.
The second.
Okay.
Yeah, the second.
The first time I only got town clerk.
Right.
So we
It's the
have
same line.
raised that salary considerably.
Pardon?
I said, so we have raised that salary considerably.
Yes, yes, we have,
The town assistant,
finally, yep.
for the
They
assistant.
said they did at the last meeting. They said
Yeah,
that
that's good.
it was upped, yeah.
Any other board open discussion items?
Relevant to the budget development process.
Please be consistent with what your requests are for all departments and hold the town accountable to what you're asking them for and what you're requesting. And I am so sorry, and I am going to attend your meetings, you guys have to ask questions. If you don't ask questions of every board, of every group, and I will point to the Board of Education, if you don't ask questions of the Board of Education as to how there's, and they need to educate our children properly, but you have to ask questions. Don't be mean, but ask questions.
Okay, anything under correspondence?
No correspondence.
Not this one.
We move on to public speak. Any? Yes, Tom?
I'm gonna come over here so that I can be on the camera. I have a few things to say. See if I remember all these things, because I didn't take any notes. First, on the subject of the Board of Education and the accessibility of the meeting minutes that you talked about. Val, I heard what you said about maintaining the records and following the procedures, and I appreciate what you informed us on. But this is 2025 and not 1925. And the expectation is that within a reasonable time period, those records are going to be scanned, electronic, and available online. Jeff, I think you need to decide how far back that needs to go in a reasonable certain, you brought it up, the
Yeah, but it's not
accessibility
me,
of them.
she is 100% right, there's rules and requirements.
Right, let me just finish what I'm thinking here. You have a requirement, that you need to go back a certain amount of time, you should define that, and then whether it's the Board of Selectmen, whether it's the Board of Ed, whether it's some volunteers that we appoint, we take those records and we digitize them and get them online, because that is the modern expectation for any public meetings, for any public records. Not that they sit in a filing cabinet somewhere, that they are available 24/7 electronically, just like every other meeting is. So that's the first point that I want to make. The second, also having to do with the school, and this is just more for historical purposes and a little perspective. You've been here 6 years, I believe you said? And at one point, you talked about the population in the school and how it was a certain size, and we're never going to see that size within our lifetime. When my son entered kindergarten in 2010, same year that Jeff's daughter entered, a year later after Shannon's son, there were about 330 kids in the school. The standard cohort was 3 classes in each grade. I think I remember there being one grade that had 4 classes. 7 years later, and there was no pre-K at the time, so this was all K through 6. 7 years later, when Michael graduated in 2017, his was the last cohort of 3 classes, and we were down to somewhere around 200, 210, somewhere around there for the school population. The population hit its nadir, I think about 6 or 7 years later, at about 170, if I remember right. And now we're back up to
250.
250? Is that including pre-K? Or, okay, what is it without pre-K? Just
It's under 190.
190, okay. So most of the growth that we've seen in that intervening time has been pre-K. It hasn't been through
It's
the...
50/50.
Yeah, okay. So I just want to point out that this precipitous drop, 50%, happened in 7 years or so. From 330 students down to below 200, okay? That when it hit its bottom. So, or maybe a few years later, in a decade, okay? so it is altogether possible. I don't know what socioeconomic factors would take, but it could happen within our lifetime. So just, if history has shown us anything, it's that we can't predict history. So, comments about school. Now, I want to switch over to Eric for a moment.
And you need to start wrapping it up.
Yeah, okay. I just want to ask, and from the 10,000-foot level, when it comes to roads, let's stay out of the weeds. How long does a road last in this town? What's the operational lifetime for one being put down new to the time it needs to be wholesale repaved? Is it 20 years?
If you start with a good sub-base and you pave 2 courses on a road, in other words, you start from like roughly 20 years before you're gonna do a major reconstruction, unless you're doing intermediate pavement preservation,
Okay.
which is the goal.
And 34 miles of roads. So if we were to just stretch it out linearly, we'd need to do 1.5 miles of roads a year. Just in rough numbers.
Need to reconstruct,
Yeah, okay.
yes,
And it's $500,000 a mile.
correct.
Okay, so you're talking $750,000 a year just to keep up with the roads.
But that's not including the preservation you would be doing
Yeah,
at
okay.
the same
Right,
time.
that's only
Just
part.
pointing out, it's a lot of money. And
Yes,
it's a sustained, kind of predictable expense over decades.
Mhm.
Okay. And last, again, well, this is Board of Selectmen, but pertaining to Eric. My understanding of how you replace somebody like him, at least the way that it's been done in the past, is that you impanel a committee within the town, a recruitment and hiring committee, and you go through the process. I've heard it mentioned by more than one person that that's something that can be outsourced to professionals, that there are professional recruiting organizations. That's expensive, but it may be another approach for you guys to consider. So, and I think I covered everything that I was thinking of.
Thanks, Bob.
Any other public comments? Yes, Diane?
Oh my God, we're gonna miss Eric. Just.
This is all coming a little too late.
Any other public comments? And I had one, and I was expecting, a lot of good information from Valerie on the school budget thing. What I didn't hear was capital improvements, and that's, maybe I missed it in there somewhere, but, last year, we heard that we were looking for bathroom, elevator, and pave the driveway. And I didn't hear any of that in the discussion that I was.
The elevator's been done during the course of this past year. The driveway was put off, so we are gonna put it off again. As Eric mentioned, there's lots of road discussions that need to take place. So at one time, they discussed doing our driveway at the same time as the driveway down here. So, and then the bathroom was funded already, like a lot of the town projects, that money is sitting there.
Okay.
So that shouldn't, I'm glad you mentioned it, Jen, that wouldn't be something that we would be adding in addition to our operational budget this year, moving forward as we see it, so.
But do we have, are we looking 5 years out?
We are, I
see
did
what
just
we need to
receive,
do.
like, we talked about this at the board meeting this week, I did just receive, the new capital, template from Eric. Thanks for doing that before you left. And so I will, continue to create the schools using the same template. At our board meeting, I had presented the fact that I have started that with a couple of sub areas, and it'll follow the same exact, model as the one that we received this week from the town, so that moving forward, the boards will have that, and it'll be all inclusive, the towns and the schools. So
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome, Jen.
Any last minute public comments? Looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Thank you, everybody.